Hello, I'd like to call to order the September 13th Instructional Committee meeting, the monthly meeting. In attendance is myself, Brenda Hastings.
September 14th.
14th, sorry, I was looking at the wrong date. September 14th. Barb Higgins, John Fabrizio, Janine Richards, and Kim Yarlott. And we've got a good-looking agenda here with lots of information, so I'll turn it over to you, Kim.
Am I automatically on?
You are.
Okay, thank you very much. We have 5 agenda items that we're going to be covering today. One was to establish priority areas and content for future meetings. The other was to do a presentation. We have Janine Richards here, John Fabrizio and myself presenting the SEL curriculum for consideration to go forward and be adopted by the school board. We also are going to be reviewing, just giving an overview of our professional development opening days, a report out on the Keach Park event, and a brief discussion on future dates and times. And then we have an other listed there for any other agenda items that we'll have. So part of the establishing priorities and content for future meetings is that John Fabrizio and myself, we met with Brenda and we took a look at the entire year. We did a kind of a year at a glance, and we established presentations that will take place at the instructional committee, September through June, and then again in August, so that we can do a projection of professional development needs following, preceding the following school year. And those priority areas include a wide range of curriculum and instruction initiatives that are going on in the district, with pretty much a presentation every month. With this month, obviously, the presentation is going to be the SEL curriculum. In October, we'll be discussing the competencies. Well, actually, I have to refer to that agenda more specifically to go into that. So we're going to go ahead. Do you have anything to add about the?
Will we be able to publish that so that people would know in advance maybe what the presentations were going to be so they could attend if they were interested? Or?
Sure, that's a great idea. I will have that done. We'll publish the year at a glance. Yeah. Sure, I'll have Bridget do that. It's a great suggestion. Do you have anything to add?
Thank you. That was a good introduction, and I think it was good to organize and sit together with Barb and just and Brenda, and kind of just have an opportunity to really talk about the year and all the things that are kind of happening. There's a lot of exciting things happening in Concord right now, and I think that this is a nice opportunity to place to bring things to and really kind of vet them and talk to them about and answer questions. So we appreciate the opportunity to be with you this year.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and get started with turning it over to Janine to give some background information about the social emotional learning competencies and the proposed curriculum.
Okay, so we're going to give you a brief overview of the work that was done by the district social emotional behavioral task force. So some context, and we are very aware that we're all new, and we're diving deeper into all of the work that was done before us. And certainly the social emotional behavioral task force was a very active group. It was developed in 2019 by Donna Pally. The group was active very active meeting in person until the COVID shutdown, and then they did continue through Zoom. And the team did not meet last year, but what we're going to provide you today was kind of their finished product to come to you for recommendation to the board and then adoption. So the team development was very strategic. It was a multidisciplinary team. There was representation from administrators to teachers, special ed, related services, all the way from preschool to grade 12. There was a foundational understanding of the CASEL competencies, which we'll kind of go over in a second. And then really making sure that the alignment with the current SEL practices that were happening in the school what their district expectations were and what the state expectations for competencies was.
Okay, before you go any further.
Sure.
Just conferring, I'm wondering if we want to just pause for a second and wait for Dave Parker, because this is something that we're going to want to take a vote on.
Yeah, and David,
Oh, okay.
and another thing we also do is when he arrives, we just make him a temporary member of the committee. This happens before things got so weird, before COVID and all the other things we've gone through. Oftentimes, committee meetings, somebody was there that wasn't on the committee, and they created the
Stayed.
quorum.
Okay.
So you just asked, would you be willing to be a temporary member of the, instructional
Okay.
committee? Yes, and now that's what he does, and he's
Great,
So
and then he'll be able to take
he's
over.
actually
Yeah.
the perfect person to listen
He
to
is,
this.
he is actually.
I'm very happy he's coming, and I said, oh, wish I invited him, I was trying to
Yeah,
think of
yeah.
that right there. 'cause
No,
Dave-
he's,
Dave
yeah,
would like
it would
to
be,
hear this.
it's worth,
Yeah.
the wait. But as just a board member, and a board member that taught 21 years in the district and worked with some of the toughest kids in those 21 years, what I'm seeing in terms of programming and just sort of the overall feeling around this type of stuff, just the community piece and the getting our kids connected and reconnected back into school and all is amazing. I mean, you must feel the same way, Brenda.
I
You've
do.
seen,
Yep.
it's up and down, as things are in education, but the special needs population and then all of the ripple affecting people involved in that population that maybe don't qualify are near and dear to my heart. And so I love when we have a sort of an understanding as a district that this is a part of what we do. Not like, oh, now what do we do over here, but this is what we do. It's been
Great.
good. So yeah, David would, this would be, is there something else that we can
Yeah,
talk about?
could we jump to either the review or the report on the Keach Park event or the future dates? So I'd say either 3, 4, or 5. We could start there and work our way down. And
Sure.
Sure,
Okay.
let's start with Keach Park. I think.
You go ahead, yep.
Yeah, so I think that, as you know, we held right prior to our opening, the Wednesday night before we opened, we had a wonderful Keach Park event. And let me talk about why we had the Keach Park event. And the why is probably as important as the amazing event we had. Part of our Title I funding in district, there's 3 levels of all Title I funding. And it comes into academic instruction, professional development, and community outreach. Those are 3 things that we are required to do under Title I law. And Ellen Desmond, our grant coordinator, and is amazing about reminding us of us that daily. And I think that we have a thing called maintenance of effort too, and we have to make sure that we not only do it, but we have to document how we did it and when we did it. Both academically, how we do reading intervention, math intervention, about when we do professional development, and we have to submit schedules and certificates and all that and do that. And then when we do night events, we have to submit our agendas to back up our grants and do all that and things like that. So there's a why behind this, because it's a requirement. We get a lot of Title I funding in this district. We have right now all of our schools except for the high school are qualified for full Title I schools. That's rare.
Wow.
I'll tell you that, to have that. It's rare to have that in New Hampshire, but we do.
Well, and it's not necessarily how people view Concord either.
No.
So it's very
Yeah.
telling of our population.
It's telling of our population we have right now.
And
it's,
that we aren't segregated by neighborhoods as to the haves and the
No.
have-nots. We all live together.
no, we all live together, and we all have, and so in that we have a
It's always
rank.
that way.
We have a rank order.
Yeah.
Certain schools qualify more. They have more of a poverty rate. They have more of an academic below standard, and than others. And I think that those measurements we track, and we track who gets how much of the piece of the pie to equal out that maintenance of effort to try to equal the playing field. But overall, as a district, because of our Title I fundings, we do events like Keach Park, and you'll see these nights at schools. You'll see a lot of these things. They're purposeful. We also, as you know, have a first-time American population that often can't access things like log on and register your children, or to get your bus email, or all the things that
Free and reduced lunch forms.
free and reduced lunch
Right, right.
forms, all the things we take for granted. I think in sometimes our society. So the Keach Park event, the why behind it is to reach out and try to level that playing field a bit for these students coming in. We had people there giving out backpacks. We had school supplies. We had our nurse practitioner there handing out thermometers for families and masks. and then we serve them food, and it's a joy. To these families really appreciate it, you know, and I'll say, can I bring a piece to my dad? He's working tonight, and I'm like, yeah, go ahead, bring a piece to your dad.
Well,
So-
having it up there, so many of our community events happen on this side of the river.
Right.
I mean, and logically, a big chunk of Concord is the other side of the river, but
Right.
that park,
Yeah, it works.
Yeah.
And then we had our 21C coordinator Sue Farley there, who was registering people for 21C for the upcoming year, because parents haven't registered yet, and doing some of those. So setting them up for success. And then we had one of our PE teachers there from Beaver Meadow who did an amazing job, and he was like the Pied Piper. I mean, he had so many people around him. And had those kids. He was drenched in sweat at the end of the night. And I said, "How was it?" And he goes, "Wow! When I got that call yesterday, I didn't imagine this many people." And we had over 250 people there.
did he just do activities with them and stuff?
All kinds of activities, all kinds of sporting activities, frisbees and soccer balls and hula hoops.
There was
and
a volleyball net
parachutes.
set up.
Volleyball
yeah.
net. See, these kids had a ball, and a lot of the parents joined in too, which was fun to watch.
Yeah.
And then we had 7 different interpreters, 7 different languages of our primary languages that we hired, and then we did groups. And Kim and I, mainly Kim, developed a script of kind of what you need to know to come back to school, about, good night's sleep, all the things we know. If you have questions about busing, here's the number. If you have questions about your child's classroom, here's the number. And all those things that parents would want to know typically about picking up, but in their native language. And the groups really sat around, and if you've experienced it, it's great. There's I'm an administrator and I'm speaking in English, and then this person's interpreting, and then they're asking questions back. I spoke to a woman from Rwanda who's been in the country for 2 weeks, and she had 4 children. And I carried a 30-minute conversation on with her over, that she would never have that opportunity. So it was great, and the interpreter was amazing and answered questions. And some of the barriers she brought up, she's experiencing here in the country. And she was well educated where she was, but she can't get a job because there's no daycare below 5 years old that's of a reasonable or a free price or free for them.
Yeah.
And it was great because we were able to hook her up with registration and all the stuff she needed, and a job application that might meet her schedule. So it could be really life-changing for some of these families that just have to spend 3 hours of our time as a
Right.
district out in the park.
I had an
So-
opportunity to go that evening, and it was just so nice to see our families and administrators and teachers and all these different people working together. I'm wondering, have you had a chance to talk with any of the building administrators to see if it made a difference in the rollout of the beginning of the year for them?
It did for a population, and we got some feedback that it connected people. So on the first day, excuse me, after you've they met a lot of families they wouldn't meet, and they met them with an interpreter. So on the first day when they showed up, they knew exactly who to go to, and just that connection. And if you noticed, a lot of our social workers were there, and our ELL teachers were there, and Matt Cashman and his team of custodians were phenomenal, and they had everything. Like, there wasn't a piece of a napkin dropped within
No.
5 minutes. It was picked up, and we took care of the place itself too, which was important. And I think that just by exposing them and meeting them was probably the most important thing we could do.
Yeah,
that night.
it was great, and I think we just need to start purchasing now for the tables for next year, because we went through those
I know, we were at the supply
really
table.
very quickly.
So
it
we
was-
did, our committee met and did a debrief. We met for about an hour, and we talked about what worked well and what would we change, and definitely having more supplies and giving out the supplies a little bit more tempered, because sometimes
Right.
it was like,
Free for grab.
Yeah, and we talked about maybe having the Concord High School band there.
Oh,
We talked about more vendors, more translators. We talked about moving the registration table a little bit away from the entrance so that people could kind of get in there, because that was a little bit of a bottleneck. So we looked at
Some clearer
refinements.
signs so that people knew what table was
Which-
accomplishing which goal.
Yeah, so there's definitely room for improvement, but would you say about 200 people? We bought how many pizzas? For,
70 pizzas probably, I think.
Went through all the
total.
food.
And, yeah, it went through all the food. There was one last, we gave one last family a pizza. And to
All
go
the
home
water
with.
was gone, all
Yeah.
the napkins were gone, like it was,
Yeah, and again, what's interesting about this is the fact is, as I mentioned before, this is part of our Title I requirement.
Right.
So you talk about creative budgeting, you talk about things you have to do to outreach. This is really money that we are required to spend to do things like this.
Right.
And
it's a good spend.
and it's a good feel. I mean, if I was new to the district last year, and then my second time around through this, I said it was one of the most powerful events to realize where you're working and what you're seeing here.
And I think as families in the district become more aware of it, this could end up being a really large event.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's only going to grow from here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
congratulations on that.
Well, thank you. And we talked about accessibility too, and we know there's more we have to coordinate around. That's not although the Heights is a place where we hit the majority of our families of New Americans and those of low socioeconomical status. It's not the only part of town.
Right.
And I think it's a misnomer that
Right.
might be the only part of town. There's other key areas that are home visitors through Laurie Hart that go out, our early intervention home visitors. We know the areas.
Right.
And I think next year we're talking to Terry Karate too, and maybe some shuttles or something different in that end to expand a little more to open it up to parts of the city. Because
Great.
the venue can handle more.
Mhm.
It's just the transportation there. Our busing system in the city doesn't work that way. So it's kind of how do we figure that out and supply something
Yeah,
there.
if we had a school bus that,
Could go from, leave a
Yeah.
school bus there
go
for
to
kids to go,
some of our neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some of the other parks, we
Yeah.
could locate it
Yeah,
and
put a
say,
school bus at
it'll
Kimball
come to-
Park with
it-
a-
Right,
you
it'll
know.
come to White Park, it'll come to Kimball Park,
Yeah.
come to other parks. It'll
Be there at a
there
certain
this
time.
If you want to go, they can walk to the park.
Yeah,
Because they're all
get on the
walkable
bus.
distances
Yep,
from
yep.
West City.
Yeah.
And then venture from there. We've
Very
talked
good
about
idea.
those things for improvement.
That's actually a really good idea.
Yeah, I mean, Concord
David.
really, at its core was a city of villages.
Yeah.
And if you look at the same pattern at the south end and the west end, and they're little villages, and sometimes they intermingle, but sometimes they don't. And
Yeah.
I think the city planners, when they were looking at housing and affordable housing, and they were, I think, sensitive to the fact that you shouldn't put it all in one place. So, we see it mixed,
Yeah.
you know.
We just talked about that because all of our schools qualify for Title I, so,
Title I, full
which
size
means
Title I.
it's a citywide thing.
I'm on Merrimack Street, and there's, half a dozen or
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
of both.
Well, I'd like to welcome Board Member Dave Parker, who has agreed to join us tonight, which is great because we would like to make a vote later. And I'm wondering if you would be willing to be a temporary member of the Instructional Committee for this evening.
Yes, I will.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And do we want to jump back to
Yeah.
Janine's presentation then? Thank you.
So, Board Member Parker, thank you very much for being with us, and we've paused our presentation because this is something that we're going to vote on bringing forward to the full board for adoption. So we have Janine Richards here to do the presentation of what's happened, the sort of the timeline of what's happened with the curriculum, the competencies around social emotional learning, and our recommendation to you for consideration for bringing to the board for adoption. So thank you, Janine.
So to give some context, as I was telling Barb and Brenda before, we're very new, right? So we're still trying to kind of get our feet wet in everything that has been done before us. And one of the very active committees was the Social Emotional Behavioral Task Force. It was started in 2019, was active through the COVID shutdown. It was a strategic plan, and a strategic team. You'll see an actual list of team members. It's pretty extensive, that represented pre-K to grade 12. They had a real understanding of the CASEL competencies, which we'll talk about on the next slide, and alignment with SEL current practices. So they really did kind of a deep dive into each school as to what we were currently doing and how to align those with school and district expectations. So really, when they went through the competencies to break down all of the components, they used the CASEL framework. So the CASEL stands for Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. And it has these 5 areas and really groups of competencies that children need to address in education. So these are some documents from the actual SEL task force. So I'm kind of using their own words to describe their team. Their stated goals for their task force was to know what the goal of the task force is. And it was to develop recommendations for the establishment of a district SEL framework. I think it's important when we say district SEL framework that they weren't trying to sell or pilot a particular program, but rather a framework and set of competencies that are kind of interwoven between all instruction. Know what is meant when we talk about SEL, and we'll get to that in just a second. Know what the MTSS framework is and what the pyramid model is. And I think this is important just as SEL is not its own separate thing. And I think that that's an important stated goal, that it isn't in isolation. How does it kind of work with our whole MTSS framework? The current state of the state of Concord within SEL and how it is, a state goal as well, and to generate questions to provide structure to our work together. Do we have any questions on kind of their goal? Okay. And we'll try to answer them as best we can, not having been there, but so I thought this was important because these are their kind of brainstorming thoughts about the task force as to what is it that's going to make social emotional learning thrive in Concord. So well-regulated and self-aware adults. I like that that's number one.
Yeah.
You can't
I'm off the list.
you can't breed calm out of chaos, so that's for sure.
Yeah, that's
Positive school and classroom culture and climate, positive connections among people at the school. And I think that's important, as it's not just peer-to-peer, but it's, teacher to teacher and teacher to student. Guiding philosophy for understanding behavior across the district, common language, teaching core values and social emotional expectations, predictable routines and emphasis of well-regulated transitions, SEL curricula infused in everyday life. Like I said, it's not particularly one curriculum. A continuum of regulation support. That's really important in our MTSS system, that we're not just providing it to one group of kids, but as a kid's needs change, the regulation support can change. Adequate resources to meet the needs of the population, student and family voice.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
What initiated this, the SEL, what
The
we're
task
talking about?
force.
What initiated that? Do you know, it was 2019? Is that something that came from the board?
I'll go back. So,
sorry,
no, it's a great question. So, history of Concord, and it's interesting. I know this because I was in a different district working with Concord,
Correct.
doing it at the time. But
Same.
and so is Janine, so
Yeah.
she could jump in
Yeah.
and say the same thing. We both led our former districts in Project Grow.
Okay.
And part of the work around Project Grow was to introduce the whole CASEL competencies framework to your district. It was a major thrust of that work. So as it was happening here, it was happening out in the Seacoast, it was happening in Merrimack, it was happening in Concord.
Okay.
I don't think it was event specific, like it
No.
wasn't in
Right, right,
response to a trauma.
No,
I mean,
no.
we were
No,
going
no.
through a horrifying
No,
trauma
this
in the
is-
district at that
this
time,
is-
but
This is
I
a
think
this was
requirement
just
of
part of
Project
it.
Grow
Yeah.
and
it
where
was
it
really
came from. And
an
state-
understanding of
Right.
changing that lens from
like IQ, EQ, like all the different.
yeah, it's
Oh,
not
yeah,
the
right, right, right.
the
Yeah.
behavior specific. It's
Right.
like, what are the soft skills and the things that we can teach throughout every single lesson, whether it's reading, writing, or whatever. How do we teach those resiliency skills?
Right.
Because kids are coming to school more and more often, having experienced trauma. So this is kind of a need for everyone.
So
Thank you. I mean, I
Right.
suspected something like that, but I just
Yeah,
didn't
so
remember.
we met as a statewide leadership group often. We met up at Plymouth State, we met here at the Grapponi, we met here in this room, and when we were all those leaders. And we were really immersed and did this work. And you remember Dr. Cassie Yackley, we
Yeah,
know
yeah.
that name. And
She spent 3 days with us.
right, and Dr. Yackley was one that really first led this charge with us, and then working with Ellen Desmond, of all people, was also one of the leaders at the Office of Student Wellness.
She was the project manager
And she was
for
the
that
project
grant.
manager for that
I
grant.
was her health teacher at Concord High, just so you know.
Right.
Freshman and
Well, no,
junior
no,
year,
thanks for that
so you're
introduction,
welcome.
Because I wanted some context, because
Yeah.
it's something that as a board member, I've been very aware of and concerned about,
Yeah.
and I think the world of Cassie Ackley, by the way. I think
Yeah.
she's terrific.
Yeah.
So, good leadership there. Thanks.
Yeah.
Getting you off track.
No, that's
I
quite
do
all
that,
right.
though.
No, and I appreciate the question because it's, you know,
Sorry.
this wasn't our original work, so I wanted,
Right.
it's important for you to kind of know where it originated. So this is kind of a visual, you don't need to obviously go through every single person on the list, but they had 48 members as part of this task force. So that is a big commitment. It's a lot of very involved staff members that really have a variety of expertise. They use Mary Claire Heffernan, Kathy Francor, and Eric Mann to help facilitate this large group.
And they are 3 consultants in the world of, you know, SEL and
Yeah.
multi-tiered systems of support, I think just for the community too, because we are televised, to know
Yeah.
that there are people that are experts in the field and have been in New Hampshire and working in this field for well over 20 years.
I could use some help with an 18-month-old student I have who lives with me.
So they made a purpose statement for their social emotional learning competencies, and they also went through the definition level of mastery. So they used beginning, developing, and secure. In one of your handouts, you have the lengthy and detailed list of competencies. So each one is separated by grade band and identified by beginning, developing, and secure for a student in that, you know, grade band, whether they should be at a certain point. Certainly when they did this, they aligned it with the Sacred Seven and made sure that it was aligning with the mission and vision of the district at the time. So really clearly a lot of work has been, a lot of the why behind what we're doing was really established here. So I think these are our next steps, and this is really where I want to hear from you as to like what questions you have in terms of now what do we do with this? So we are looking for a recommendation from the instructional committee to the board for these competencies. You do have the handout that has them really all in detail. Then if it is approved by the board, we would love to get the competencies into the hands of the educators. We're going to use the next 1 to 2 years to pilot SEL programs that align with the CASEL competencies. We have,
I'm sorry, can you just, a little more on that, about the SEL, what are SEL programs? What are some options there? Could you just expand that a
Yeah.
little bit?
I was going to, but okay.
Thank you.
No, sorry. So right now our SEL programs, and you've heard me say this before, each school is doing something different, which comes with a different language, different expectations, different routines, different characters, different read-alouds, all different things. And then they funnel into Runlet, where Runlet has a different set of language and expectations and all of these things. So
We had done responsive classroom forever, and then
yeah, and some schools are still very immersed in responsive classroom, and that's more a philosophy about how we kind of respond to everything, how we make our structure, how we talk about things. What we're talking about is an actual curriculum that would deliver these competencies in a classroom setting.
got it.
So to give you an analogy there, as like, you know, we use Fontes and Pinnell right now for our reading instruction. This is a similar, how do you have these competencies? You have the CASEL thing, you have your model, just like you have your curriculum, but sometimes you need some programming to help you reach that and develop lessons and scope and sequence and all those things that go along with a curriculum. That's what different programs do, is that part of it. As we would teach reading, we're going to be teaching SEL curriculum.
Got it.
So any program that adoption would also come through this committee and probably would start with a pilot. There's a pilot going on right now at Beaver Meadow School called Fly 5 which is something that Responsive Classroom has developed, but there's lots of different programs out there.
I'm thinking about the day of a student and the day of a teacher. Is this part of something we're already doing, or is this something new that we would be adding on to their day?
So I can speak to how Fly 5 is going.
Right.
So when working with Michelle and CISO, they already had morning meeting in their master schedule. So what we were able to do is take the read alouds that come with the Fly 5 curriculum, add that to the back end of morning meeting and elongate that time. So really they're doing an extension of morning meeting, using some of the read alouds as part of their literacy work and incorporating an SEL lesson within that time.
So if a morning meeting is supposed to last not more than 20 minutes, what are they lasting now?
About 35.
About 35?
To all inclusive, yeah.
Okay.
And then they can revisit their mindfulness cards and shorter activities, extension activities, anything that you can do. Because you want to take the moments that you have. Like if you're seeing an issue with a pair of students, and you can talk about conflict resolution, or you can talk about social awareness, or you can take those moments and use one of the extension activities to kind of teach as it's happening.
Okay, and so for the most part, students aren't being pulled during that time for special services
No.
or anything like that.
No.
They are all involved.
This is all classroom tier 1, everyone is together, yeah.
Okay.
And again, an important piece is for us to look at alignment across the schools, so that when a student does arrive at Runlet, they're not arriving with a different set of behavioral expectations, language around how you do conflict resolution. It can be very confusing, so we really want to try to get something that's K through 12, a program adoption, K through 12.
Okay. And also aligning the schools, at least in the elementary schools, so that they're all sort of in the same spot, because we do have students in Concord that move from one school in Concord to another, and we wouldn't want them to miss an important part or repeat something they'd already done either, so a scope and sequence would be very helpful.
Exactly.
We'd like to work with the educators to unpack these standards into measurable outcomes. As you can see when you kind of read through the competencies, some of the I can statements would be hard to definitively find a measurable outcome. And then the questions that we still have, particularly the three of us, and we kind of need to talk to others, is how do these SEL competency align with CARES, which is another kind of reporting out of social emotional wellness, and is there an accurate reflection of this on our report card? And if not, how do we build that, and how do we make sure that the competencies that are being taught are being assessed and addressed and reported out to families?
Do our schools currently, at least the elementary, have a standard report card? I know we had been working on that, but I don't know that a standard has been adopted among all the schools.
Report cards is an area that
I don't
needs
think so.
Some
This
heavy
is
attention.
generations of building-based
Right.
management in this district. It was all different.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy, oh boy.
So as we do some things like this, I
Yeah.
think that you gotta kind of, where do you start? Do you build the
Right.
report card, then build the ship behind it, or do you build the ship and then do the report card to report out what you have?
And the strategic plan's got to
Right,
fit
and
in
the
there
strategic
as
plan
well.
fits in there, so it's kind of like, having experience with writing an elementary report card, it can be years to find that thing. So I think as you hear Kim and I and Janine this year, we're going to talk about some trying to bring some parity to some things. And that's not always popular
Right.
amongst all of our buildings that have been site-based management, but it is what we're trying to do. And I think once we bring some of the parity, the natural report out, because our data will be consistent, can fall nicely into a report card. If we try to do that right now, it'd be a stretch. It's just timing of when you do that, I think, because we don't have a strategic plan done yet. We don't have these things with SEL curriculum yet.
Consistent data and- yeah.
We're still working on what, like some of our, science of reading right now is changing again. Here we go. Those who've been in it for a long time know that every 20 years, reading flips its head up, and here we are again. 20 years have passed.
We gotta do
and I
phonics
think-
again.
Yeah,
Bring it
and
back.
that's where we are. So as those things go on, we're going to be developing more consistency across our schools, then we'll get to a point where when we're consistent with what we're doing, the report card will naturally come together because we'll have
Yeah.
consistent data. Is my best. And Kim, would you add to that? That's just my,
So I
Thinking
would
about
add that, that was helpful. That's the strategic plan. I'm doing the curriculum portion of that. We're working with teams to do the curriculum part. And we were looking at it the other day, and definitely what came from the administrators was the need for K through 12 curriculum alignment. So philosophically, they're there.
Yeah.
Right.
And
The longitudinal.
And yes,
right.
and we just had a math committee today that's ready to put forward their curriculum, that's K through 12 with the strands
Wow.
going through and the competencies going through K through 12. So it's happening. It's
Great,
starting to
that's
happen.
wonderful. You have good people in Concord, they're always willing to jump in and try to make it work, so that's great. Good.
So you need, support from us to suggest to the board that we adopt these competencies. There's a lot here. Is there a way that we can get these can they be emailed to board members so that we're not sitting in a
Yeah.
meeting?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a
While they
PDF.
read them,
Yeah.
yep.
right.
We'll make sure they're part of the packet
Yeah,
and do all
yeah.
that too, and we'll probably give them up beforehand if we can. Yeah.
Yeah, even beforehand would be great,
Yeah.
and I'll send a note as well, just saying, these are coming to you, take a look at them, like we do with
Right.
policy
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, and we'll do and Janine and I work on a one-pager for that
Yep, I
night
already have it started.
presentation.
Yeah,
To be able
perfect.
to do that.
Yeah, that would be great. I was gonna
Otherwise,
say,
I
you guys
suppose we
need to.
could do it like a first reading,
Mhm.
and then have it come back the next month, unless you were looking for something more quickly than that.
Teachers are asking for it, and committee members who have spent a lot of time on this are asking for it.
So
No, I think we can do it.
Yeah, I think we
I think
can,
we can do
especially
it.
if we.
Yeah, and, yeah, if board members can look at it and then you give a brief explanation at the meeting, and then we're here to sort of support what we've heard, and then I feel pretty good about it. I mean, I think we need competencies, and then, obviously, as you go along, if a competency makes no sense, those are revisited all the time.
Right.
But this is amazing.
Well, I also think it's well-grounded. You did some good research and worked with good people in setting this stuff up. It's good from the scanning that I'm doing.
It's a lot, and we
It
understand.
is a lot. It's a lot. It's a real lot. And you what about how we're gonna assess it, and how's it gonna be on a report card? But I think it's much a way of thinking, when you're teaching kids, as it is, the report
What you're
cards.
quizzing them on, yeah.
Well, I'm not, I have a thing against paying too much attention to performance. How are they doing, are they happy, are they learning, are they excited,
Are they available for learning?
Yeah, they're available to
Right,
learn.
A lot of it's observable skills.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. You put just your grade level on the report card, you don't have to have all of it on there. so.
But the
So could I-
self-regulation stuff, I mean, it's gotten really challenging, and kids don't know how to regulate. Well, adults don't need it, by the way.
Could I have a motion to bring forth these competencies to the full board for consideration of adoption?
I'm so moved.
Okay, second.
You want me to second it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll second it.
Moved by Barb. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're
We
welcome.
appreciate your time and attention to this.
No, this, you can't,
Brenda the chair?
she's the chair, yeah.
Okay, sorry.
I used to be
Brenda,
for like forever,
Oh, okay. And then
so
you gave it up. All right.
now I'm capital facilities.
Again, I'm coming in like,
Yeah.
Trying to like, what's going on? This is different. This is not how it should be.
it's all right.
Nobody can do anything well if they're afraid, pressured, intimidated. You know what I mean? If you have to do a hard skill and someone's screaming at you, you're not going to do well at that skill. So all of this is just such common sense sometimes, but it gets lost in all the pressures of reading scores and, oh no, we've lost 2 years, and all that goes into performance. This is exciting stuff. I like it.
And thank you to all of the people that did so much work from 2019
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
right through now as well.
I was instructional committee chair then, and I remember we talked about this stuff quite a bit. It was a long time getting that group together and all that, yeah. All right.
Thank you, Janine.
Okay,
Thank you.
And then do we
Thanks,
have to do
Janine.
one more thing on here?
I
PD
think
days?
We have a couple of more things.
Oh, yeah.
We still,
So, I'm projecting for you what, we did for our opening days, for professional development. activities. And I just wanted to celebrate and acknowledge the fact that we had an all-district welcoming event that happened at Memorial Field. We had the marching band come and do an amazing performance, and it just was almost like a pep rally. It just got people going. It was just absolutely fabulous. Under very short notice, these kids pulled us together and did a fabulous job. I think they said they only practiced like 3 times together before doing it.
Gotta love band camp, I'll tell you.
Yeah, yep. And so we met as an entire district. Paraeducators were welcome to attend. They weren't required to attend. We introduced all new professional staff, literally by name and standing up and acknowledging them. And then we had Jim Richards give a little bit of, by the way, I emailed this to you. So
Okay,
you can
oh,
have
good,
it.
thank
Yeah.
you, thank you.
We had Jim Richards give a little speech, and Kathleen Murphy gave kind of a pep rally talk, and it went really well. We closed that up, and then we looked at some priorities that really had to take place before the start of school, and one of them was we adopted through a pilot the Heggerty program, and the Heggerty is a phonics program that really works on phonemic awareness and phonological processing with young students. And it's added to what we already have as what we consider to be a balanced literacy approach, but explicit phonics instruction is now included between 20 and 30 minutes a day for students. And this, so the kindergarten staff, special ed teachers, Title I teachers, it was really important that they got training with this program. So we did 2 hours of training with that. And then per the contract, the teacher's contract, the teachers are allotted 2 hours each day for building classroom setup, and then they also were allowed to do building-based activities, or administrators had building-based activities on the first day of our PD. The second day is something that's really exciting, and I'm gonna, John, just weigh in at any time. One of the things that John, when he came to the district, became aware of, and then I was sort of behind him when in coming here, was that we lacked a common assessment for students, K through 12, a universal screener, and one that is normed and that is standardized. So at Runlet for years, they've been using iReady. iReady is an online assessment that students take 3 times a year, and more if they are being progress monitored, they would take portions of it. Again, it's standardized. It comes out with students being sort of red, yellow, green, like they're on target. They might need some tier 2 intervention, or they're needing some more severe intervention. And that's
Is this across subjects or just reading?
I was just going to say it's in reading and math.
Yeah, I remember we had the STAR
It-
years ago, the STAR test.
Right.
The
This
same
is-
thing, they get on there.
Yeah.
We did at Walker School. It was super helpful.
Yeah, and the reason for is, so we have the SAS test, it's what it is. I think you know better than I, because I'm only in my 2nd year in the district, but I worked with the PACE project too, when Concord was big on performance-based assessments and looking at authentic work and what kids were doing, and we're a believer in that, and I want to be kind of clear on that. That's a belief that we want to see what kids can do, and never look at one form of data.
Well, no, it's true. Where are you
Yeah,
today?
yeah,
And-
right.
yeah.
And we have SAS, which is mandated. The district was doing PACE, they went away, so we had to do SAS. We all have to do SAS now. And SAS is good, but it's a measure, like performance-based measurements that we do right now in our classrooms. We didn't have that third leg of the stool. And when I came, I said right away, when I started talking to the middle school, and I said, I'd like to try to stretch this a little bit and bring it further. And Kim came in, and we had a lot of conversations, and Mary Wilson. And what this does is give you, okay, SAS is telling me the kid's proficient. Their performance in classroom's telling me they're proficient. And now I have a third measure saying, well, they are proficient. However, here's some skills that are not taking them to exceeding,
Right,
and bringing that thing, and looking at those skills there to say, what are those skills? Break it down a little more for me. And iReady gives you the opportunity to break it down a little more and go a little bit deeper. And that's the reason for our kids to have that measure. And let us know if we get a kid who's really high and gets a 4 in the SAS and looks great, but then he's getting 2s on the iReady.
So
up?
what's missing? What's
What's
going
up
on here?
here?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
and it's we have 3 times a year data reviews. This is to give us another chunk of information to do that.
And so we went with, I'm sorry.
I was thinking, and it would help you to see progress throughout the year, not just at the beginning or the end of the year.
Right.
Is
Yeah.
that, okay.
I think as well, a kid can have competencies and still have a hole in there,
Yeah.
in their learning. And when it comes to, I think of all the years I tutored fractions, just the concept of fractions. They could get, 80s, but the fractions would come to haunt them, in 7th grade and 8th grade when they got into algebra, and in 11th grade when they got into trig. They just never understood those concepts, even though they were strong students and competent. So this pulls some of those skills out, I gather.
Exactly, it does
and-
very, very, very discrete analysis, and it's standards-based.
Right.
So you might say that, for example, students they can put a fraction on the number line,
Mhm.
but the standard reads, understand and identify where a fraction goes on a number line. Can they really, truly understand
Correct.
what a fraction is? And so that's where the standard will come out and say, this is a discrete area where the student needs to work.
Mhm.
So there are, as you know, there's lots of different assessment tools, universal screeners. There's MIWA, iReady STAR, and none of them are perfect. However, that being said, it didn't make sense to change what's happening at Runlet with grades 6, 7, and 8. And so when we looked at a further rollout of this, we said, wow, talked to the high school, and they said the 9th grade teachers could really benefit from having at least the assessment data from iReady on their students, so that when they're teaching their students or determining if they're going into Algebra 1 or looking at specific needs, if we purchase the iReady for grade 9, which we did, they're gonna do a beginning of the year screener, and then they're just gonna use it only on those kids who show that they are needing some progress monitoring. So it'll be up to the educators, both in reading and in math. As to how much more they use. If a student's proficient and they've been proficient, we don't need to overtest, correct? So,
Right.
So 9th grade, it's gonna look a little bit different, and we also purchased 200 extra licenses at the high school in the event that, say, a person is teaching, a history class or social studies class, and they are trying to find out some more information about why a student might be struggling, they would have access to the reading. And also allows for more special ed teachers to also have access. So the high school is really excited about this. And then, so we looked at bookending 5th, but 6, 7, and 8 by bringing this to 9th and bringing it to 5th grade. So part of what you can see right here is that we had some trainers in, and we just did boom, 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 like massive push out to get people familiar with how to administer the test, how to read the results of the test. And then there's we differentiated a little bit because at Runlet, they had already been using it, so we brought them into how to use some of the instructional tools that iReady has developed. So they actually have lessons that you could do. If you notice that it will cluster students, so if this group of kids really need some more work with fractions, it will say, this is a group that you could do, have it be your own math group, so you could have different, like guided reading groups, you have different guided math groups, and this is what the students would benefit from working on, so it actually clusters the kids for you.
Do they give you lessons for that
Yes.
instruction?
Yes, they do.
Is that a separate program that we have to purchase?
No,
or-
it's part of the license that we got for them, because they were at that next level.
Okay.
And was the instructional component, that other teachers aren't ready, the other grade levels aren't ready for that instructional piece of it.
Okay.
Some of it's embedded in the software that we already have, but it's more suggested lessons. It doesn't have to be, they don't have to use those lessons, because they are good teachers and they can pull their own lessons, but at least targets the skill that they need to address.
Okay.
So, for example, in the middle school, we have a win time, what I need time, every day. There's an advisory, then a win every day, and those are consistent blocks throughout the entire schedule. Actually, I have it right here. I was there today. And in the win time, let's see, what I need is, I don't know, a focus on algebraic formulas, and I gotta know more about them. I don't get those well. Or we have a focus on just basic multiplication skills. They'll have some online lessons that are prepared that target this, but that doesn't replace direct teaching. It's a part of some direct teaching, independent practice, and some skill building. And it's kind of, this is one of the tools to help teachers at least pinpoint where the skill is the kids got to work on and help them do that. So it's a great supporting mechanism for those skill groups. We're trying to implement that.
Which I think is great. I hope that we are making sure when we add on grade levels that we're providing them with the tools they need, and that we don't have a formal math program in the younger grades at this point, but that they have the lessons available to them, and that they're not just trying to pull from here and there to get the lesson.
So at the end of this month, we have the consultants coming back to work with the high school on how to analyze the data. And then on November 8th, we have IReady consultants coming back to work with all fifth grade teachers on how to analyze the data.
Oh, nice, nice.
Great. So the support is there.
Yeah,
Great
that's
support.
awesome.
So overall, great start to the school year, and I just wanted to just keep you apprised of that.
That's great. Thank you very
Any
much.
questions, you guys good?
I think that's great.
No, that's awesome, yeah.
An active beginning
It
already.
was an active beginning, it was
Yes.
fun.
The last thing on our agenda was moving future dates and times. And Barb, as a continuing member, I would love to get your thoughts on this too. That if we sort of scheduled instructional committee meetings for the second Tuesday of every month, so that people could plan that way.
Yeah, I would like, it was that way years ago. It was, certain meetings, instructional committee meets a lot because we're a
There's
school
always
district,
gonna be- yes,
lots
we
of
have
instruction to
lots of
talk about.
presentations,
Yeah.
so this would give people time to do
Yeah.
that. So if we sort of put in the ethos out there that we'll meet every second Tuesday
Yeah.
of the month, and then
You
we
mean
were
Monday or
looking at
Wednesday?
times.
Tuesday.
There's Tuesdays, because there aren't a lot of meetings on Tuesdays. So instructional's gotten bumped quite a lot
Right.
in the last few months because of other meetings coming up. Would
Yeah.
Tuesdays be all right with you?
And I work on Tuesday nights. I coach CrossFit.
Okay, John can't make it on Wednesdays.
Yeah, oh, right. So let me look, because that's something, that schedule fluctuates. So
Okay.
if I knew I had an instructional committee meeting,
Maybe,
I
maybe it would
could
work. Okay,
maybe
so
not
if you
coach
could
on
take a
that
look
day.
at that. And do you have a particular time? We had looked at maybe at 5 o'clock. Is that too early?
I'll be as much as this I might sound like an old curmudgeon. 5:30 to 7 is such an embedded time
Okay.
that if anything later,
Okay.
6 to 7:30, or better than earlier. I just so much
Later
going
is
on,
better
like
than early.
yeah. And they
I was
and
just trying to think of all the people that are presenting
right, have to wait around.
and have to wait around.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
But they're
All
waiting
right.
for us to finish our day, so it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, let's talk, and let's just be flexible with it if we
Okay.
all can agree a certain time. But yeah, that might make sense. And then, because yeah,
All right. So that sounds.
do
good.
we
So
have?
moving
When do we
forward-
have it next month? Do we have it?
It's scheduled for October 5th or so, and it's the Wednesday right after the school board meeting, which kind of makes it a little bit frenetic.
Yeah, actually, I'll be at Walt Disney World then too. So.
So why don't we look at moving that one if it's not already a full schedule, and I'll look at moving that to, it would be the Tuesday, the next following week.
Yeah, and that could work. Yeah.
And I know John can make those, I believe Jonathan can make those as well, because he doesn't have another commitment.
Yeah.
So we'd be moving it from October 5th to the October 11th.
Yes.
And if we have it off weeks from the school board, I just think it gives us time to breathe.
Well, yeah, it does. I agree.
Okay.
So we'll say October 11th and the times to be determined.
Right. We'll start it at 5:30 right now, maybe next month, and then we'll have more people here that are on the committee on a regular basis, and we can work with those.
Because I know Kate would not be able to get
She
here
wouldn't be able to do
early.
a 5 at all. She has a hard time with the 5:30.
Yeah.
so.
And
Okay.
then-
Perfect.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so if I move that we adjourn.
That's my job.
Okay, go.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned.
Thank
at
you. This
6:20.
wouldn't have happened if you didn't come.